Welcome to Temptation by Darkness, a podcast that delves deep into the shadows where fear and fascination collide. I'm your host, Evan Graves, and today we're going to dive into a story that's made up of spooky folklore and modern mystery. It's a story involving one of America's favorite holidays, the infamous St. Patrick's Day. But before you grab your green beer or put on your shamrock hat, let me warn you, this isn't about parades or leprechauns with pots of gold. Today's story is scarier, much scarier. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and get ready for the green veil. It all began in Boston, a city steeped in Irish history, culture, and superstition. For decades, the streets of Southie came alive every March 17 with floats, bagpipes, and rivers painted emerald green. But beneath the merriment was a whisper of something ancient, forgotten by most but remembered by those who dared to listen. Our protagonist is Jack O'Connell, a man whose life revolved around routine. In his 34 years, he worked as an IT specialist for a mid-sized technology company in the inner city. Jack wasn't particularly superstitious. He didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or any of the other supernatural nonsense his grandmother told him about over Sunday dinners. To him, St. Patrick's Day was just another excuse to drink too much and make a fool of himself. But that all changed when Jack inherited his grandmother's house after her passing earlier that year. The modest two-story colonial stood on the outskirts of South Boston, surrounded by sprawling oaks and ivy-covered fences. Jack hadn't been there since he was a boy, but now the house belonged to him, and so did its secrets. Jack had moved here in late February, hoping to spruce up the house before he put it on the market. He figured it would take a few weeks, spackling the walls, organizing the closets, and possibly repainting the faded mint green shutters. What he hadn't expected was what he discovered in the attic. On his third day in the house, curiosity took over. Armed with a flashlight and a dust mask, Jack climbed the creaky stairs to the attic. The room smelled of old books and damp wood. Boxes were haphazardly stacked against the walls, some neatly labeled in his grandmother's loopy handwriting, others left unmarked. Sorting through the clutter, Jack came across a small wooden chest nestled in the corner. Its surface was carved with intricate patterns, twisted vines, Celtic knots, and unfamiliar symbols. The lock was covered in rust, but after a few minutes of picking with a screwdriver, the lid opened with a groan. Inside, Jack found a collection of strange objects. A tarnished silver brooch in the shape of a clover, a bundle of dried herbs tied with twine, and a leather-bound journal. The journal caught his eye immediately. Its pages were yellowed with age and the ink was faded, but it was still legible. Flipping through it, Jack realized it was written entirely in Gaelic. Jack didn't know a word of Gaelic, but there was something about this journal that made him uneasy. There were sketches scattered everywhere, strange creatures with elongated limbs, shadowy figures lurking on the edges of forests, and maps scrawled with ominous symbols. One page stood out from the rest, a crude drawing of a woman draped in flowing robes, her face hidden by a veil of leaves. Beneath the image were scrawled words in English: "Beware of the green veil." Jack closed the journal quickly, feeling a chill run down his spine despite the stifling heat of the attic. He slid the trunk back into the corner, telling himself it was nothing more than an old family heirloom. Still, the phrase kept him on his toes. Beware of the green veil. Over the next week, strange things began to happen in the house. At first they were subtle. The door left slightly ajar when Jack was sure he'd closed it. The sound of footsteps upstairs when he was alone. Then came the dreams. Every night Jack dreamed of the same woman from the diary. She stood at the edge of a dense forest, her figure shrouded in mist. Her veil shimmered dimly, catching the light of the full moon, which never seemed to move. She beckoned to him silently, holding out her hand. But no matter how hard Jack tried, he could not reach it. During the day, Jack tried to shake off the restlessness. He put it down to stress and lack of sleep. But on the morning of March 10th, he woke up to find a single clover leaf on his pillow. That's when it all came to a head. The days leading up to St. Patrick's Day became increasingly strange. Neighbors reported seeing flickering green lights appearing in the windows of Jack's house late at night. Strangers in hooded cloaks began appearing on his street, their faces obscured by shadows. When Jack confronted them, they would simply stare at him with blank eyes and then disappear into thin air. Desperate for answers, Jack took the diary to a local historian named Dr. Margaret Keegan. She specialized in Irish folklore and mythology and, though skeptical at first, agreed to translate the text. After several hours spent over the pages, Dr. Keegan looked at Jack with a mixture of fear and awe. "This," she said, tapping the journal, "is a warning. Your grandmother knew much more than she said she did. This book describes an ancient entity known as the Green Veil, a spirit that is said to guard the border between our world and the netherworld. According to legend, it appears in times of imbalance, seeking to restore order, often through violent means." Jack frowned. "By what means?" Dr. Keegan hesitated. "Let's just say she doesn't distinguish between good and evil. If she believes someone or something threatens the natural order, she destroys it. And judging by these records," she interrupted, pointing to a passage at the end of the diary. "What does it say?" asked Jack, leaning closer. "It says, 'She's coming for the keeper of the chest.'" Panic set in. Jack returned home in the evening, determined to get rid of the trunk and everything in it. But when he opened the door to the attic, he froze. The trunk was gone. With his heart pounding, Jack searched the entire house, turning over furniture and rummaging through boxes. Nothing. Defeated, he collapsed on the couch, wrapping his arms around his head. That's when he noticed the television. He didn't turn it on, but the screen glowed softly, showing interference ... Gradually, the interference cleared, and the screen showed a grainy black and white image of the forest from his dreams. A veiled woman stood in the center, her gaze fixed directly into the camera. Her lips parted, and though no sound came from the speakers, Jack clearly heard her voice in his mind. "You can't escape." Terrified, Jack grabbed the hammer and smashed the TV to pieces. Shards of glass scattered across the floor, but even as he stood panting, he knew it wouldn't be enough. March 16th came, and with it came a thunderstorm the likes of which Boston hadn't seen in years. Lightning split the sky and rain poured down in torrential downpours, flooding the streets. Jack barricaded himself in the house, armed with a baseball bat and a penknife. He barely slept, jumping up at every creak and groan of the old building. At midnight, the clock struck 12, heralding the beginning of St. Patrick's Day. The electricity went out, plunging the house into darkness. Jack lit candles, their flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. Then he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the roof. They moved slowly at first, purposeful and heavy, and then changed to a frantic rhythm. Something or someone was lurching back and forth above him. Jack gripped the baseball bat tightly, his knuckles turning white. Suddenly, the front door swung open with a deafening crack. The wind howled through the house, extinguishing one candle after another. In the pitch darkness, Jack felt something foreign enter the room. A cold hand touched his cheek, sending a shiver of terror through his body. He swung the bat wildly, hitting nothing but empty air. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves inside the house. Then from the shadows came a voice, low and melodious. "You have awakened me. Guardian, now you must pay for it." Jack staggered backward, tripped over a chair, and fell to the floor. Through the gloom he saw her, the veiled woman. Her figure shimmered like liquid emerald, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "No!" screamed Jack, leaping to his feet. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." But the green veil showed no mercy. With a wave of her hand, the walls of the house dissolved into mist, and Jack was left standing in the heart of the forest from his dreams. The last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed him was her smile, the cruel, triumphant curve of her lips. When the sun rose on St. Patrick's Day, the house was empty. Neighbors reported hearing screams in the night, but when the police arrived, they found no sign of Jack O'Connell. The only evidence was a single clover leaf lying on the living room floor. To this day, locals claim that if you walk past the old O'Connell house after dark, you can hear a faint whisper carried by the wind. Some say it's the voice of the green veil looking for its next keeper. Others believe it is Jack, forever trapped in the netherworld. And so, friends, the green veil is a warning to those who dare to meddle in the affairs of inscrutable forces. Remember that not all legends need to be revealed, and sometimes the past has a way of coming back to haunt us. If you enjoyed this episode of Temptation by Darkness, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exciting story. Share this episode with your friends, especially if they plan to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with over-enthusiasm. Who knows? Maybe they'll think twice before bringing up the old trunk in the attic. Until next time, stay curious, but stay safe. This is Evan Graves with you.